Hello and welcome to News Now. Tonight, a very special guest who wants to be the first female mayor of Detroit. She supports the release from prison for former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, and her house disappeared. A house that she had for charity suddenly was demolished by mistake. State Representative Sherry Gay Degnaio, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here, and I've never met you before. It's nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you too.
Yeah, so tell me about this. You're considering running for mayor. Why is that?
Well, Kevin, I am a former staffer with Detroit City Council for 9.5 years consecutively, from Alberta Tinsley Talabi's office, Councilman Cleveland's office. During my tenure with City Council, I worked on things like constituent services, NOF block grants, something we hear about a lot now, and how the money is used differently, and also just understanding the issues that our city is faced with. I left the city of Detroit 2001, started a nonprofit, the Coalition to Integrate Technology and Education, which we'll talk about a little bit more with respect to the House, because that's part of that organization, as well as eventually going into the classroom. I'm a former science teacher with Detroit Public Schools, but always an educator. And so I thought I would make my impact by leaving the city after seeing all of the challenges with our residents, perpetual poverty, and how would I make my impact? And I said, well, you know what? I'll go and make impact in the classroom. Saw a myriad of challenges there, saw the odds were stacked against our students, and wanted to change that, and became a fellow. Actually, I was selected in 2008 to be an Obama Fellow and an Education Pioneers Fellow. I went out to the Bay after making a tough decision between the two, because who didn't want to be with Obama in 2008? But I went out to the Bay for 10 weeks and studied education reform, and came back home knitting together my prior experience in the city and the relationships that I had in the faith community, labor community, et cetera, to try to advance education reform, and then realize all the challenges that exist with respect to policy, eventually going to the House, and now serving my time there, realizing we're still, I just turned 53. We're still having some of the same problems even through the different administrations we've faced. And so I want to go and be a voice, a person with a lens from the city of Detroit that understands the problems of the city of Detroit, has sensitivity beyond downtown in the heart of our city, but want to bring resources to our neighborhoods, neighborhood development, and look out for the people who are struggling. I've had that experience of struggling myself. I love our city. I believe our city can thrive. But I think it's important that we knit together our grassroots community, our middle class community, and our corporate community. And I think we can all coexist, but we need leadership to inspire everybody to get involved, and someone who's experienced some of the barriers and challenges that exist in our neighborhoods, to be a voice for the people, to inspire them to get involved and to participate.
Well, we have a mayor currently, and
Yes.
if he decides to run again, what would you say are the reasons he should be taken out of office? Where is he failing?
So I think he's done some things downtown that are good and noteworthy. We see downtown thriving. I think the disinvestment in our neighborhoods is a clear challenge and problem for me. Just recently, the $600 million tax assessments that many of our residents have experienced, lost homes. I lost a home to foreclosure, so I know what that feels like. And so our residents, to simply tell them that there's no recourse or we're looking into it, yet we give billionaires tax breaks in excess of $600 million and more, the development that is ongoing downtown, there is not enough resources allocated to the problems that are perpetuating poverty in our neighborhoods. I worked on NOF block grants when I was working for City Council. I know a time when seniors could get a roof put on their house and get their steps fixed. Those things don't exist now for many of our residents unless they qualify for a loan. It's wrong to take those dollars that come from the federal level and turn them into a loan in which many people still don't even qualify for. And so we continue to cause problems that will cause lag, that will cause our city not to thrive. And I think we have to be intentional about that. Investing in our small businesses. We get tax break after tax break after tax break that goes to large corporations, to the Illage Arena, to down in CompuWare, also the FCA, giving away properties for nothing. But what are we actually doing to really empower the residents of the city of Detroit? What are we doing to uplift them and change the trajectory of their lives? That's what has to happen. And there has to be a core commitment to that. And I think it has to come from someone who understands that and what it feels like to struggle. And so I've made it out. But I want to be a bridge to help others make it out and allow them to benefit from the renaissance that we're seeing that exists in downtown city of Detroit.
It seems the idea is that if they bring down a lot of development, bring in business, bring in jobs, people are spending money and more tax dollars will be available, and then to try and trickle out to the neighborhoods. But it's been very slow.
We have not seen a trickle that has shown any benefit to the neighborhoods yet in this administration.
How would you do that, though? What would you do differently?
So, we've talked about a number of things. A group came to me, the Detroit LLC group, which is a group of retirees, actually. For one, I think that we have to go back and renegotiate some of the tax benefits that exist, not only for our small businesses, none exist for our small businesses. Do some of the same incentives that you've done for the larger corporations for the neighborhoods. Myself and Representative LaTanya Garrett, Rep. Wendell Bird, we're all advocating. I'm the Detroit Caucus Chair. So while it's not my district, we all went and met with members of the Avenue of Fashion for them to have to apply for a loan after the streets were dug up and inconvenienced their businesses. Give the tax incentives at the local level so that the city can thrive and grow together. And let's look at returning the benefit to our retirees who have paid their debt to society, who have worked, and now the rug has been pulled off from under many of them, taking away their health care benefits, taking away their pensions. I say a city that begins to thrive on the books needs to make those people whole. And we're not seeing that. There seems to be no real concern for people who are struggling. All the allocation and the resources go to those who are already thriving. And we're not making community benefits agreement to demand that those relationships exist. Look at the demolition program. That's an issue for me as well. Right now, we see, the bond initiative that was put on hold. It didn't make it to the March ballot, but we know things are being shifted around. It's going to come back. My thing is, I'm not against demolition. I'm against misappropriating funds, using the hardest hit fund the wrong way, and not making sure that African American and Detroit-based contractors have a stake in the game, and not just giving them a little carrot to dangle right here while we're trying to get the bond initiative moving, but let's put it in ordinances and community benefits agreement that it exists long term. And that's not what we're seeing.
All right, we're going to get into more of that after this short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest tonight is State Representative Sherry Gay Dagnago of the 8th District. We're talking demolition.
Yes.
The mayor early on said he made some mistakes, but the mayor also said they're knocking down more homes than ever before. They're making the city safer by knocking down homes. Your home was knocked down. Tell us what happened there and why you think that there's fraud in the system, or at least maybe unfairness for local contractors.
So there's a couple things here. I'm not sure what happened with my home. I have an attorney. I have a couple of attorneys actually that's working with me and my board to make sure that we get down to find out what actually happened.
It was there one day and it was gone the next.
Yes, it was there one day. It was gone the next. Our property has sustained damages from one of the city's properties actually that had caught on fire that is next or was adjacent to it. That property was torn down by Adamo for $22,000 is what was stated. Our property was boarded. We were waiting for insurance to come in to determine what our next steps were. We're working with an organization called New Start, trying to either provide affordable housing, give the home away, do a veterans program, senior program. We were looking at all kind of options, but this was our first project and initiative with our organization, the Coalition to Integrate Technology and Education. We've been celebrating Detroit's birthday for 5 years, every July, and our goal was to acquire properties near and around parks, that's in House District 8, and to kind of ameliorate the the barriers of challenges of blight in the neighborhood, instead of boarding up the same properties every year of what we have been doing, working with Labor's Local 1191, the Carpenters, and other organizations to do that. And so we were excited. We were complete novices in this project, and working with organization New Start, we acquired the property, we got quotes, they started fixing and repairing it. Then boom, damage occurs and we have to go through this claims process. So in the end, I didn't want to become a story, the thing I didn't want. I became, we saw another leader in our state who had to deal with this issue of a property. And so I was eagerly trying to find some type of recourse, especially since we were waiting on insurance for so long. And sending folks by to give me quotes to repair, maybe sell it, take it down, give me something so we can find out which path we're going, because again, the insurance didn't come until after the house was actually taken down. And so we found ourselves in a place where, okay, the house is gone before the city even, we had a notice from the city that said that we had to be compliant by, I think, October 14th. My dates may be a little off there about, but at any rate, it was gone much sooner. And so we're still trying to find out why or how it was gone.
But do you think that's just a mistake that happened in a big program, or do you think it's a sign of a bigger problem?
So you know what? Initially, I thought it was a mistake. I actually had my own theory. I actually thought I was a police officer working in tandem with the police. I went by, I saw a tree, I saw an address that was closer to our property, but that had the address that Adamo had torn down previously. And I said, you know what? They made a mistake. Someone came through, they put in a new sidewalk in front of a burnt house and a house that is no longer there. And they decided that they didn't take the house down as they should have. Maybe the systems weren't communicating. And so they took down the house that I thought, that was my theory. I found out later from Woodland Meadows and other media folks that they found our actual address at the demolition yard or whatever. And then that kind of freaked me out, because then it's no longer a mistake. They intentionally took our house down, and then we started going on the hunt to find out. So who actually gave the orders to take it down? Nobody had records. It's a mess. So, we think we'll get to a lot during discovery, and I think a lot of that will happen in February.
Okay, I want to ask you about Kwame Kilpatrick, the former mayor of Detroit.
Okay.
You're actively trying to get him pardoned?
So let me say this. I am the Detroit caucus chair. We had a breakfast with a White House official talking about opportunity zones. During the Congressional Black Caucus, Jerron Smith was one of our speakers in Washington, D.C. We met, we talked, we had a myriad of city leaders that were there, including the Detroit caucus members, Detroit City Council members, Wayne County Commission members, et cetera. And so Jerron talked about the opportunity zones, opportunities that exist with respect to development in the city of Detroit, et cetera. And then our follow-up dialogue was that we hold a conversation in the city of Detroit. We did that. We invited pastors, contractors, elected officials. In that conversation, Mayor Yap, Pastor Ron Griffin, who wasn't able to attend, but called me the morning of and asked that I specifically go on record asking Jerron, the White House official, regarding information to pardon Kwame, because they had already started. There are a number of pastors, Bishop J. Drew Sheard, his father Sheard, Bishop Van. It's a list, and if I start naming names, I'll forget some of them. But at any rate, they had already signed on to a proposal that they were awaiting information for. I gave them my word that in that meeting about the opportunity zones and development, that I would also raise the concern about the petition that was coming before them to not pardon Kwame Kilpatrick, but to commute his sentence. And so he served 10 years, the reduction to time served, or 10 years. And basically that's what we put in the room. And Mayor Yap was there, several other elected officials, Mayor from Benton Harbor, Marcus Muhammad, Mayor Kelly Garrett. A number of them have gone on record as saying that this is something they would like to see. And the argument from many of the leaders in the African American community basically state you have officials, other elected officials that did not meet the same time for more egregious acts. So it is my understanding that the $1.5 million contract or overpayment for a water department contract is what's in question, or that was part of the charges. But you have folks that have billions of dollars on Wall Street that didn't get the time that Kwame Kilpatrick has. So no one is arguing his innocence. I'm certainly not. And I understand that a number of people have stated that it's his arrogance. Well, arrogance isn't a crime. So let's let the time match the crime. And so that's why I got in the space, because of my relationship with Congresswoman Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick, to basically communicate that to the community and communicate it to the White House official that was there. And so that's how we start working. I'm an organizer by nature and by training from working with city council. And so having the relationships with the civic leaders, the faith leaders, labor leaders, that's how I kind of got in the midst of helping to move the message forward.
All right, I have to stop you there. Thanks for being here. We'll be right back with more news now. Welcome back. Governor Gretchen Whitmer needs to fix the dang roads, and now there may be an idea. Joining us now is Chad Livengood from Crane's Detroit Business. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kevin.
So this is kind of interesting. The governor and the Republicans did not do very well at negotiating or working together, playing nice in the sandbox the first time around. The 45-cent tax hike was not going to fly, and it did not fly.
Right.
But now there may be another way.
So now Governor Whitmer has decided to go at her on her own right now at this point, and she has got authorization from the State Transportation Commission to issue $3.5 billion in bonds. That's just another word for debt, to essentially pay for a reconstruction of state highways, which only amount to about 8% of all the roads in Michigan. But this will give her a big pot of money to spread over the next 4 to 5 years to do major reconstruction of big highways, 696 in Oakland County, 96 around Novi. There's going to be I-94 sections in Wayne County. They'll get rebuilt. There's going to be highways all around the
also
state.
The entire state, right?
Yeah, that get reconstructed, but mainly in the urban areas in downstate. I mean, there's not a lot of freeways that are crumbling up in Traverse City, but in the UP, but there are certainly freeways crumbling in southeast Michigan. About 38% of the money will go to southeast Michigan, which is where basically 39% of the population lives.
So it makes sense.
So there's some equal distribution. They've figured this kind of out to make sure that it didn't look like it was all going to Metro Detroit. But this is basically this Governor Whitmer called this Plan B during her State of the State address. And this is assuming that she gets no new revenue. And we're going to see, she has her budget address this week, whether she proposes any kind of additional revenue for the legislature to consider. But this is basically how she's going to go about doing this without them.
And how did that Plan B fly? Borrowing money, maybe not a great idea. Some people say, well, money's cheap right now. Maybe it's a great idea. How did you see it going over?
Well, with the Republicans, they didn't like it. They don't like borrowing the money. They don't like pushing off the debt service. We're talking about 25 years of debt service because basically she's taking the MDOT's credit card. She's maxing it out. I've called this the get out the damn credit card plan. But basically she's going from we're at $118 million right now in debt service every year MDOT pays. We're going to go over $300 million. And that's going to be $300 million off the top from the $1.2 billion that MDOT gets to maintain and reconstruct Michigan roads. So what that does in later years is that just commits MDOT to that debt service first. They have to pay that before they spend one dime maintaining roads. And that's one of the problems the state has had from all the bonding that Republican Governor John Engler and Democratic Governor Jennifer Granholm did in the late 90s, early 2000s. They did all this bonding. We got a lot of good roads then. And then the bill kind of came due, and the Snyder administration spent 8 years paying down the debt. We were only, in 2027, the state was projected to have just $7 million of debt service. So we were almost going to get all this old Engler-Granholm debt paid off, and now we're basically going back and hitting the credit card again.
In addition to the 3.5, we'd be borrowing $1 billion. How much more money would actually be needed to fix the additional roads that this wouldn't cover?
Well, the various state engineers and civil engineers who looked at the state's needs, everyone's concluded we need $2 to $2.5 billion more per year going forward. This is a $3.5 billion shot in the arm for 4 or 5 years. So we're just still going to be at least $1 billion short every year. And just to remind your audience, this does not fix one single county road. 13 Mile in Oakland County is not going to get repaved.
So she's got to get the roads fixed. If this isn't going to do it, what might do it?
Well, it's just going to come back to trying to find the revenue. Either cut something else in state government, in the state budget, or raise taxes in some other way. There is a increasing talk about trying to pursue toll roads for certain highways. That won't obviously that won't fix those trunk line roads that people drive on those main arteries, like the mile roads or Michigan Avenue or Gratiot Avenue, which in Detroit Gratiot Avenue is not doing too good right now.
So tell me what this potential grand bargain might be.
So if there's a lot of components, if the governor wants to get a big deal with the Republican legislature, there are some lines in the sand that have been drawn by the legislative leaders. Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey has made it clear he wants to incorporate long-term financing of teacher pensions as part of a bigger issue to address a kind of a looming little crisis in the school aid fund, where 5 years from now, we're going to go from $3.5 billion a year being spent on teacher pensions to $5 billion. So that $1.5 billion is going to basically crowd out any growth in funding for schools. It'll take away money, all the projections show, it'll take away money for more money for classrooms, for teachers. And so Senator Shirkey wants to address this as part of potentially the road funding deal. And the way that's connected is that sales tax is applied to every gallon of gas you buy at the pump. And that 6% sales tax does not go to the roads. It goes predominantly to schools, and also the rest goes to cities. And there's a lot of angst, and from both legislators and also from motorists, that not all the money that they pay at the pump goes to roads. And that basically, if you're buying $3 gas, 18 cents of it is siphoned off for some other use. And so House Speaker Lee Chatfield, Republican from Northern Michigan, his big thing is he's not going to do any kind of road deal unless this issue gets solved. But to take the sales tax off of gasoline, you blow an $800 million hole in the state budget, and $600 million of it goes to schools. So now you got a bunch of other people who have interests who lose their money, and their proverbial ox gets gored. So this pension funding scheme could be a way to lower the state's cost over time. It's akin to refinancing the mortgage. Rather than paying off the mortgage in 20 years, you pay it off in 30 years, or maybe you go 35 years. And you lower that cost, you create savings in the school aid fund that you can use to make up for the loss in sales tax that's connected to the sales tax on the gasoline. Now, this is all very complicated, Kevin, and this is why last year Governor Whitmer is like, "Hey, let's just raise the gas tax by 45 cents. We'll have one historic vote and we'll be done." But the legislature said no to that. So they want other options. So other options are going to require a whole lot of other moving parts, and it's a mouthful to explain.
Well, when you hear education tied to roads, remember that you heard it here first with Chad Livigan. Thanks for being here. That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night. Have a good night.